Welcome back to the podcast that exists to enrich and inspire young Latinos.
Bienvenidos al podcast que existe para enriquecer e inspirar a jóvenes latinos. Bienvenidos. El día de hoy estamos de manteles largos. Tenemos nada más y nada menos con nosotros a Martín Cabrera. Martín, thank you for being here with us today.
No, gracias. Gracias, Vicente. Glad to be here.
So, Martín, for anybody that doesn't know Martin, Martin is a big name in the nation. And he, I couldn't do justice introducing you, Martin. Just as we publish this podcast, we're going to be publishing his biography so you can learn more about him. But Martin, tell us a little bit about who you are, your background. You from Chicago, you from Mexico. Tell us a little bit about your family history.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was born here in Chicago, but my father was born in San Luis Potosí and my mother in Durango, Allende, a little pueblito in Allende. And my mother came over when she was 6 and my father was 7. And they grew up here in Chicago. And I grew up in a little village, a big,
La Villita.
La Villita, big family, a lot of cousins and second cousins and third cousins. It was my brother, my sister, and I, and we were kind of growing up in the neighborhood like everybody does, and through kind of some of the struggles in the neighborhood. And, there's always gangs and drugs and everything going on. But just, I think part of it and why I love Ixcali is kind of that faith kind of helped guide me. And I got into trouble when I was a kid, and but also just always working hard. I think I started working at the flea market with my tío when I was about 6. And just having different jobs as paper routes and 7, and just enjoyed working and helping out. And the little money that I made, I kind of help out my mother and father too, and which kind of made me happy. But even going around the neighborhood with my grandfather with a big black garbage bag, collecting cans and turning them in for, you'd weigh them, see how much money you get back. But, just those talks with my grandfather as well. And I didn't realize it at the time, but just all that hard work that kind of we would do, it's paid off. But also just some of the perseverance and, the struggles. I think when I was younger, or growing up in La Villita, but then my father wanted to get us away from the gangs and move us to the little further southwest and by the Marquette Park area. So my brother and I were one of the few Latinos at the school. So, it was kind of not on a daily basis, but probably every other day we're getting into fights because, folks didn't really know Latinos or Mexicanos. And so, we usually had a choice. We either had to run home or you stay and fight. So sometimes we didn't feel like running. And when there's 10 on 2, the odds were against us, but, sometimes you kind of hit hard enough and some of those folks don't come back. So, yeah. But, you also make good friends with them afterwards. After you get into a fight with somebody, then later you kind of shake hands. You end up playing basketball or football with them. But just growing up, we always, even though we're in a more Anglo neighborhood at the time, we always went back to La Villita and played baseball and basketball at Petrowski Park. So it was great. We kind of were fortunate. We had our friends in where we lived, which were kind of white friends, and we had our friends in the neighborhood too, and we go back and forth. And later we'd kind of bring them together. So, I went to grammar school, public schools, and I went on to Bogan High School on the south side of Chicago. And from there, I thought I was going to be an architect. I had taken some architectural classes, and my senior year of high school, one of my teachers approached me, and he knew I love sports and a bunch of my friends. So he's like, "Hey, Martin, I want you to take my econ class." And I looked and I was like, "Mr. Ortiz, I'm going to be an architect. I'm going to U of I." It's like, I got my whole life, set up and, planned. And I was a senior, so I thought I knew everything. And he kindly put me in a headlock and told me, he's like, "Martin, I want you to take my econ class and we're going to play a stock market game." I was like, "Okay, Mr. Ortiz."
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about stocks or bonds. And so he kind of told us, like, well, this is how you read the stock tables and the stock market. And he asked us who knows what a stock and a bond was. And I didn't know anything. So, we're a bunch of Latino kids from the neighborhood, and we never had any money to invest. So we never talked about investments. But I told him, I was like, Mr. Ortiz, I know what a bond is. That's something between a man and a woman. And they come together. He's like, no, that's not it. We're not talking about that, Martin. It's like, and I didn't know, but he explained to us what the stock market was and what the bond market was. And we played the stock market game. They gave us $100,000 in simulation money. And, we had to go and invest the $100,000 in simulation money. And so we picked, people that your friends to be on your team. And so our friends in the neighborhood, I convinced our team to put it all into one stock. And I was like, let's put it all here in this one stock. And we bought it for $324 a share. And the next week we looked at it and it's at $36.25. So all my teammates and my friends, the girls were pretty upset and they're pendejo, you lost all our money. It's like, they were not gentle at all. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. But my teacher, Mr. Ortiz, explained what a 10-for-1 stock split was and how we're making money. And that kind of opened up my eyes to a lot in investments. And we ended up coming, I think, in second place that year in the Chicago public schools, but also in the state. So I ended up changing my major to finance, and I changed my university that I was attending. I went to NIU, Northern Illinois University, and started getting internships and getting to the investment world.
Wow. Martin, I'm really humbled by your beginnings, you probably the most successful Latino I know, the most successful Mexicano I know. So for a lot of young Latinos here in Chicago, we see you like the goal. If I don't make it, hopefully my kids can know your story and be like you. But as I hear your story, the humble beginnings in La Villita is so powerful, collecting cans with your grandfather. How has that shaped you as one of the most influential Latinos in the city, but also the most influential Latinos in the country, honestly? How have your humble beginnings in El Barrio de La Villita in Chicago have shaped you?
I think it has everything to do with who I am, and my friends, and the guys I grew up with when I was 6 years old. We still get together. Some have taken different paths in life, but we're all friends, and we just when we get together, we remember how fun it was growing up, and as teenagers and in the neighborhood too, and trying to stay out of trouble and do some good things too. But I think part of it is my family. And I know my grandmother, who she's 100 years old, but she and my mother and the family just instilled our faith, our Catholic faith. And I think, that has a lot to do with it, because if it wasn't without that faith, I wouldn't have gotten through and been blessed. But I think it's important that, we have to not just go up a corporate ladder, but we have to reach back and help others and give them the opportunities and push and fight and scream sometimes, for those younger Latinos to get those opportunities. And so that, the struggles that we went through, that they don't have to go through, as they're kind of going through, whether they're going to be doctors or teachers or lawyers or going into investments. But it's more so we have limited amount of time in this world. So it's taking that opportunity where you can do well financially, but we can also do a lot of good and helping out others and giving back. And that's what makes me happy. And I think for my family as well, I'm blessed with, 5 kids and wonderful wife that, support me and allow me to not just do business, but also to do a lot of non-for-profit work and working with different organizations kind of around the country and even in other countries as well. That, I do have a strong Latino agenda. It's to help out our community as much as possible. So, and there's some great examples from La Vita, Rodrigo Garcia, who's deputy treasurer for the state of Illinois, overseeing $38 billion, and wow. Edgar Hernandez from La Vita as well, and Durango too, and is SEIU, but also overseeing all the pension funds, and just a lot of great stories from Back the Yards, Humboldt Park. But it really that core is that Latino work ethic and love for family that is really. You can never forget that. And that's what makes us who we are and the beautiful part of our community too.
Yeah. Martin, your name opens doors in many places, and I think there's a lot of young Latinos that look up to you in many different ways. Not only because you are successful, but because you are committed to the community. And as an influencer, as a person of influence, um, what does that mean for you as a Latino, and how would you like to make the difference in the Latino community?
I guess for our Latino community, I see us as still being very young and just being new to even the business world, even though there's been many businesses and successful businesses around the country. But it's really having an impact on life. And what I tell folks, it's like, it's not how much money you can make or what kind of car you're driving or what kind of house you have. It's like, what are you going to do with that influence, whether it's money or power or even for elected officials? How are you going to help out the greater good and your brothers and sisters too? And I think that's a true measure. It's not about the business measure. It's, when, people look back on life, I don't necessarily want to be known as, a businessman. I'd rather be known as like, hey, a philanthropist, or he was giving money away to organizations to help them and to inspire them and lift them up so that they can see the true value of our Latino community, how beautiful and great we are, how much we drive the economy. But also it's looking at those opportunities and business I enjoy. And I think that as you start to see, even for our DACA students as well, they have such great opportunities. And even with all the challenges that they're facing right now, like, what would it be like if the CEO of Facebook is a DACA student? Like Latinos that are coming up, that are running Google, running Facebook, running Tesla, all these major corporations, they're going to be more civic minded and giving back and say, hey, we're not just going to do well with our companies. We're going to make sure we're giving back. And that, we try to instill that even with the other kind of Latinos that we do business with, that we're supporting our community, not just not-for-profits, but also those businesses. Who's our printer? Who's doing our other work? Who's kind of our lawyer? Who's kind of our accounting firm? So to make sure that it's trickling down, but it's also circulating in our community too. And, also, not falling into that Latino crab syndrome where sometimes we're competing against each other, fighting against each other, or talking negatively. It's like, no, it's like we got to come together as Latinos, whether we're Mexican, Puerto Rican, Colombian, Cuban, but to help one another and support one another to grow and be united and be a strong force that we are here in this country.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you said that, because I do feel that as Latinos we can be more united, but we can, we are very divided, and that's very unfortunate. We are very jealous of each other's success many times, and I feel that we need to move on away from that. Martin, a lot of our audience is young people, and you said that you make mistakes. You got in trouble when you were young. As I see you in front of me as one of the most influential Latinos in the country, it's hard for me to think about a young Martin making mistakes or.
You can talk to my mother, my tias and tios, and they tell you how much trouble I got into. But
so, what would be the advice that you give the younger version of yourself? What would the Martin of today tell the 20-year-old Martin?
Mm-hmm. I would say that even having those opportunities just to take more risks, and even though I kind of am a risk taker by nature, I still kind of held back a bit and going for different opportunities, going, to taking big, bold steps. And, sometimes when you take risks, you get burned too. And I've done that in business. It's kind of, you made some bad mistakes in business. But I think for the younger Latinos, it's like the whole world, it's out there. It's so much opportunity, but sometimes you just got to go for it. And people are always going to tell you, well, you should be really thinking about this, all the reasons why not to do something, whether it's starting up a business, whether it's going for your MBA, whether it's like, hey, I'm going to follow my passion and I want to do filmmaking in the movies. And it's like, if you love it and that's your passion, just go for it. And you're going to hit a lot of brick walls, but you can't stop. You got to, dust yourself off, get back up. And whether it's the federal government putting roadblocks in front of you, or, corporations or other people or entities, it's like, you can't give up. You got to just know that, hey, it's going to be tough, but that toughness and all those times you get knocked down, you harness all of that. Sometimes it's frustration or anger. And you're going to say, hey, I'm going to use that and turn it into something positive to keep going and to be successful. It's like, how am I going to show them? I'm going to kind of do what I dreamed of and what everybody was saying I couldn't do. I'm going to make it happen. And it takes time, but it's like, you can't give up. But you got to take that risk and throw your heart. There's the old saying, if you throw your heart over the bar, the rest of your body will follow. So sometimes you just got to go for it.
Wow,
and,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I think, there's people that will be naysayers, say, don't, what are you doing that for? It's like, well, you can't listen to all those folks. If you want something in life, you got to go for it and put your full body and mind behind it and surround yourself with some of those positive people that are going to be pushing you and challenge you in the right way too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Martin, what are some of the biggest obstacles you have had as a Latino in the finance industry? What are some of the obstacles that you feel that probably push you back? And I'm sure at times you feel that you want to give up, right? You don't want to push forward anymore. I have felt that before. I'm pretty sure you, at the level of leadership, you have felt that. How do you overcome that?
There's been many cases where even been discriminated against or passed over, and I've been called a spick, and and I think I've gone to try to pitch certain accounts and meet with the CEO, and I've had somebody tell me, it's like, hey, well, if you come by and cut my grass and trim my bushes, I'll think about doing business with you. And it's like, my first reaction growing up in the neighborhood is always, I'm going to get up and punch this guy. But you can't do that. You got to just think about it differently. And, you can't react emotionally, and just know that there's people out there that are going to have that, especially in the financial world. There's only like 4 Latino firms that do what we do in the country. And most folks aren't used to dealing with us. But you have to, deal with those roadblocks and, those frustrations and getting passed over, or even not getting a deal because we're Latino. And, but you have to keep pushing, and you come back thinking, I need to work harder, be smarter, get the right context so that they don't say no to me next time. And so even when they've told me no, I'll go back to that company and say, okay, you're not giving me this deal. I want to know why, so I can make myself better next time. And, you'll be surprised. They'll kind of come to you. It might not take 6 months. It might be a year or two, but, you can never take no for an answer. And you just have to keep going and fighting through it. But there's going to be a lot of times where you're, passed over for a position or discriminated against. And you just have to know it's out there. And as Latinos, like, I know when I walk in the room, sometimes I'm the only Latino, and most of the time it's older white guys. And, I'll speak up and say something. Well, that's not what you should be doing, because you're disrespecting the Latino community. And all the old white guys turn to me and look at me like, what? But you have to be able to speak your mind and know that, sometimes we're in the positions that we're in because we're representing our Latino community, and you can't hold back of who you are and why we're there, but who we're representing as well.
It's beautiful that you sit around these tables with executives, not thinking about yourself, but thinking about that you're there representing a community that many times is overlooked. Martin, you also talked about a support system, having people that have pushed you forward. Can you talk a little bit about, the importance of having people that root for you? When we all know the people in our lives that are telling you, no, you're not going to make it, don't try, don't waste your time, don't take risk, right? But there is the other side of things that we also find in our path. People that say, look, this sounds a little crazy, but if you think you can make it, go for it, right? what are some of the people that you can name and key moments in your life that were key to pushing you forward, and how important is that in your life today to have a support system around business decisions, personal life, uh, just in general, people
Yeah.
that keeping you pushing forward.
Yeah. So I think there's plenty of folks, and I've been blessed in the sense that there's a lot of people that helped me out along the way and given me opportunities, from friends to kind of folks in the business, folks outside of the business, even elected officials that have given us kind of those opportunities. And, there's many of them. One of them is friend Al Gonzalez. He passed away about a year and a half ago, but he's always like, sometimes you're feeling down because you keep getting rejected trying to go after this business. And, but he's like, hey, Martin, you got to keep doing it. It's like, you got to dust yourself off and keep pushing forward. But I think also, other folks, and even in the church, sometimes it's like, I remember what I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I fighting for Latinos? Or, because it's the right thing to do. And even in our faith, you see the discrimination even in the Catholic Church as well. Sometimes Latinos aren't respected within the church and giving the full kind of credibility of who we represent and what we do and who we are in the Catholic Church. But it's kind of educating some of those folks. But I think there have been, opportunities with CEOs, but also kind of elected officials. One of the U.S. senators, Bob Menendez, he's from New Jersey, Cuban by background, came here when he was 2. We'd work with them closely and really trying to push this access to capital for Latinos. And I refer to it as Latinos aren't into investments in this $80 trillion market. Latinos are good to give money to that $80 trillion market, but what we're representing is not even 0.5%. So for Senator Menendez, myself, we kind of worked on ways, how do we pass policy at the federal level to make sure that corporations that are doing business with the government, but also the federal government, are including Latinos. And when you go through some of those tough fights, you realize some of the folks that you're in the trenches with, and they inspire you too, that we're doing the right thing. Same thing with Tony Cárdenas, congressman in Los Angeles, other elected officials here, kind of Senator Tony Munoz, Senator Iris Martinez, and so many others that were fighting for these issues for Latinos to uplift our communities in the financial world, which most Latinos aren't even paying attention to. But, we are contributing to this economy in a major way. We're 22% of the whole U.S. economy. And even for some of the Anglo CEOs, they don't realize that they're like 22%. Are you sure about that? It's like, no, I'm positive. And it's growing. It's growing about 90 billion a year of our buying power. So we're driving the Apple stock and the Tesla stock and all these other companies. And even, not right now during COVID, but the movie theaters and for technology and other areas. So there's some great mentors out there, and I've been helped by quite a few major corporations, federal government, local government as well. And, we've been blessed that once we're given those opportunities, we can't let people down. So we've got to do a great job and really hustle and make sure that when the report comes back to them that, hey, they did a great job. It wasn't, they did a good job. It's like, we have to be great at what we do. And more so for all the Latinos coming behind me, I have to make sure that it's easier for them to go after those business opportunities too.
That's wonderful. You've been in the business for how long have you been in the business, Martin?
It's been about 26 years now.
I'm about to ask you a very tough question. What's your biggest lesson in these 26 years?
There's been a lot of lessons. And, Vicente, the ones that you remember the most that are like burned inside of you are your mistakes. And the key thing is to learn from them. Even after the crisis in 2008, we did well. We went and there were a lot of people that were let go from a lot of major firms. And I had tried to recruit these folks to come and to work for us. They would never answer my phone calls or pay attention to me. But afterwards, they're like, hey, Martin, we want to come and work for you. It's because they didn't have jobs and the whole market had changed. We expanded aggressively, especially in New York, and had a big office space and hired, over 26 people, short period of time. But, they didn't work out. A lot of them were not good producers, and it started into some big losses, which not just impacted our New York office, but our overall office. But those struggles and those mistakes that you make, and sometimes growing too fast, you learn from and you never forget. And it actually makes you cautious to think, okay, we don't want to make the same mistake twice. But even from people that, you work with and have worked with, it's interesting because people will treat you a certain way and they will show their true colors if they think you are quiet or meek or even weak. And I'm just kind of quiet in my nature. So I'm just going to speak up when it's time to speak up and not just to talk. So folks would kind of show who they are. And sometimes they were jerks, and I could put it in other terms, but, just put it that way. But, it's like once you realize who they are, you know how to work with them and work around them and just being successful. And I know for some of the folks that I would deal with, whether they didn't like seeing a Latino in financial services, the way you kill them is with kindness, but also you beat them at their own skill set, or being an investment banker, being an institutional trader. And that burns them up even more so that, hey, this young kid from little village is like kicking my butt and producing more than, the four of us are producing that have been doing this for 20 years. So, there's a lot of kind of lessons learned and, mistakes you make. And, even people that we hired that, turn out not to be good hires, but you don't stop like going out there to hire good people and give them opportunities. Some work out and some don't. But you always I go within, a glass is always half full, and you got to, fill the glass as well. So, but I think it's like you can kind of share that energy and push folks and motivate them to do more, and more so because they are representing a Latino firm. They might not be Latinos, but they work for a Latino firm. And that I think all my employees are clear about. And we have to do a great job and just go out there and kick butt. So nobody can ever talk ill of us on our performance.
That's wonderful. It's powerful that you said that, what burns in your heart is your mistakes, because many times when we make mistakes, we don't notice that those mistakes are our biggest and more important lessons in life. And I think I thank you for reminding us of that, Martin. Martin, what is your inspiration? What gets you out of bed?
I don't know. I enjoy making a difference. And I think I could just stick to business and just make money, but like that fulfills me to a certain part. But the other part is making a difference. How are we going to make an impact for, my daughters that are in high school right now, that be going on to college? And I think that we have an ability, no matter where we came from, it's like we could move mountains, and there's no limits to what we can do. And I want to make sure that, when my daughters if they decide to go into the investment world, that they're going to laugh at me when I tell them, yeah, mija, they wouldn't let Mexicanos into managing assets and with the pension funds. And I want them to laugh at me and say, that's not true, papi. It's like that, like it's almost unheard of. But that's the case. And that's a case now. But I hopefully that by our actions that we are going to open up the doors for so many others to come behind us and to, do well, but also do good, and to give back, and not to forget where they came from and the neighborhoods that they came from, and that they're supporting them and in different ways, either through scholarships or internships, or even giving back to their church or their local neighborhood organizations, because that's important. All of our Latinos, our younger Latinos, need to see that. They need to see those successful people coming back to the neighborhood to talk to them and to let them know it is possible.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Martin, I know your faith is important to what you do because I know you, but also when I went to your office, well, one thing, the logo of your firm is also a symbol for the Holy Trinity.
Yes.
Is one thing. And also when you walk into your office, it's beautiful to see that you have a picture of Jesus in the front desk. You don't need to do that. You're in the finance black downtown Chicago. But it's clear that faith is important to you. How has faith make a difference in your life?
Vicente, it's we have the Sacred Heart of Jesus right there on the counter, and I know when I walk in, it's like that's who I report to in the morning, but also at the end of the night. And the faith is who I am. It's I think I'm a smart guy, but I'm not that smart, and it's more so through the faith in God that has led me down this path, but also an obligation to do something. And for the faith, it's been there, I think, from my grandmother, my mother, my tias and tios too. It's always been part of who we are, and has gotten us through struggles, whether it's in Mexico, whether it's here, kind of crossing over and establishing roots in Chicago and Texas and other parts of the country and Arizona. So it has everything to do with who I am. And even during the downturns in business, when things have, they had gotten pretty bad, it's those struggles that you put your faith in God, say, hey, you know what? I've got all this on my back and it's hard to carry it all. I can't do it anymore. And you turn it over to God, and that relief, and that burden's taken off your shoulder, just to have enough faith to give it to Him, and to say, whatever you decide to do, whether I need to close my business and I can go back to selling jackets at the flea market, to provide for my family, I'll do that. But knowing that my faith in God will always be there, and that's who I am and who's shaped me. But even through those tough struggles, I mean, there's those nights I remember I used to sleep with my crucifix and say, all right, Jesus, you got to help me figure this out. I don't know how, you're going to bail out of, this financial mess. And, when we're struggling and some years back, but somehow He kind of came through and got us in different trajectory and growing and blessed. So that faith is who I am. And it's about sharing that faith as well and bringing others to God, even when they're going through struggles as well, so that they know that at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And we're not taking anything with us. And I could, be a billionaire here. That doesn't mean anything. It's like, it's about helping others and being a good Catholic, and providing for others and helping others too.
Yeah. I'm almost crying here, Martin. As you say, sleeping with the crucifix through difficult times. I have done that. There is something about, just knowing. There is something about sleeping with your crucifix that is just not letting God know, I really need you.
Yeah.
I really need you. Like, I need you here through my sleep. And I think those times really make you value the moments of peace and the moments of success, right? Because you remember that there were times where you were sleeping with your crucifix. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, I think it's and every time I go through some difficult times, and I think about how did my grandfather, when he crossed the border, make it, and I'm sure he had, not much money, but he was going to figure it out. And my grandmother and my mother and father as well. But it's through their faith, and that God has kind of led them, through different paths, and us through different paths. And I think those struggles, sometimes we go through those struggles because it's God calling us back to get closer to Him. Yeah. And we can go different routes and go with different vices through alcohol or drugs or, other things. But it's like, God wants us to reach out to Him in those times of need. And, I've had some friends like, I feel like I'm a user because I only turn to God when, I have really bad problems. And, it's like, that's when God wants you to turn to Him. So don't feel like a user. It's, you can turn to other things, but you don't, and you're turning to God. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I also feel that in the mystery that God is, He sometimes, through these difficult situations, is when we become vulnerable, and we can, our heart is hard, but when we become vulnerable, we open up to Him. So I have found myself that through the difficult times, I really know that what is happening is God saying, "Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here." Yes, yes. So thank you for sharing that, Martin. Martin, where do you see hope the Latino community? Uh, you're in contact with probably one of the major cities in the country, right? You have offices in the major cities of the country. Where do you see hope in the Latino community?
I think there's a lot of hope out there, Vicente. I think, I'm so inspired by some of the younger Latinos too, because they're going off and becoming engineers and doctors and at a younger age. And they are thinking about their community and where they grew up. And they're taking on roles because they know that they're going to come back, after college and be successful. And they're taking risks, leaving Chicago to go to California to school or to Boston, or to New York, and to really invest in themselves for their family, not just themselves, but for their family. But I think the hope really is in our younger folks because they're thinking differently. They're thinking much bigger. And by their actions, they're going to be taking on so much more. And I think all of our Latinos, the number of younger folks that are turning 18 that can vote, and they're speaking their mind and voicing their opinions and protesting in the streets when they need to, it gives that certain amount of freedom and liberty. And even as, I think Latinos and Asians are the two communities that are most likely to marry outside of their community. But it's like, as Latinos, we're going to share all those big parties and invite folks over, whether they're white or Asian or black. And folks get to learn more about our community and our families and see how beautiful we are in the different cultures. So, the growth is going to be there. The growth is going to be in technology. You're going to see it on the silk screen on movies and TV shows. And that's what we're pushing to change the perception, of what's being shown on TV. We're not just, playing the roles of gangbangers or maids or gardeners. It's like, no, we need a senior role. It's like, these are the top kind of movies out there. And it's Latinos that are going out there to see those movies. So we want to see more of that, and we have to change it. But I think that younger community is doing so much more, and they're dynamic, and they're in STEM and going into these different careers that typically we wouldn't see in the past. So it is exciting. It's like
breaking the ground.
Yeah, and making it happen and not giving up.
Yeah. Well, Martin, we are first of all, it's so inspirational. I've been here, but I feel that I want to go back and listen to this conversation because you have given us a lot to think about, and as a role model for a lot of young people, I like to just open up the mic for you and maybe talk to the young Latinos that are listening to us across the country, and maybe as a Latino that came from El Barrio de la Villita in Chicago, as somebody that was picking up cans with your grandfather to sell, and today you're making the big moves in the nation. Yet you stay humble, you give back. Business entertains you, but you're here to make a difference. I just want to open up the mic and with freedom. What is your message for young people that are listening to us to finish up?
I think for the younger Latinos is that, the world is at your feet and it's what you're going to make of it. And you have to go out there and take risks and get out of your comfort zone and push yourselves to do more, to go into different communities, to go to different cities and states and to explore and, even different countries, to study abroad, do different things. And there is going to be tough roads ahead, and you've already, you may have suffered deaths in your family, folks, in your family, maybe even going to jail and separation from parents. But all of those struggles, all of those roadblocks are experiences that's going to make you so much better. You don't realize it now, but it's going to make you push even harder at school and at work to be the best. And, that's a certain grit that you have because of all those roadblocks and struggles that a textbook can't teach you. But it's going to make you so much more of a better person and push you in everything that you do. So don't let anything or anybody stand in your way of your goals and dreams. And you got to push yourself, but you just go out there and make it happen and do it. There's a lot of Latinos that are supporting you and that, we want to see you succeed as well. So don't be afraid to reach out to the older Latinos too, wherever we can help, because we're always kind of reaching back to make sure we're identifying, there's plenty of rock stars in our community, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity. And I look for those Latinos similar to me that they might not be that polished, but they have that grit and that energy and that, hey, you know what? We're going to give him an opportunity. Let's back his company somehow, or her company. She's been through these struggles and that those similar backgrounds, that they're going to do well. And, they're also going to do a lot of good and have the similar mindset of giving back and helping others. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for our young Latinos and Latinas. It's endless, and you just have to go out there and throw your heart over the bar, and your body will follow it, and everything else will fall into place. But don't be afraid to take those risks.
Martin, just to finish it up, a lot of people might not know your story. Maybe few of the achievements that you have, few of your achievements that maybe you want to share before we close the mics, that you say, see, I made it happen. You can also make it happen. So maybe a deal or business decision that you're proud of.
Yeah. So I think there's been a lot of deals, and sometimes we're the first in the Latino side, but I don't ever lose sight of that, because it's for all the other Latinos that are coming behind us. So I think last year we did about $160 billion worth of corporate deals and about $44 billion worth of municipal deals. And it was a strong year for us. But representing Latinos, knowing that, hey, it was a great achievement, but we're just barely scratching the surface. So it's not to pat ourselves in the back. It's like, hey, we got to keep pushing forward, because we got to double this next year. And, we're fortunate to be in a Twilio deal. It was roughly about almost a $2 billion deal last month, which was very difficult. We had some of our bankers working hard on it too. And, one of the bankers, she did a great job of just going after the account. And it didn't happen overnight. It took almost 2 years, but, it was a great deal. And just across the board, it's a success that we have on some of these transactions. And, we've done over about $1.4 trillion worth of deals. But it is that impact that we're having, even that we have to call some of our clients who pay us fees at Cabrera, but tell them when they're not doing something right, and they're not, even though they're doing something, it might be small. So calling them out on the carpet, which is difficult. And we've lost clients because I've spoken my mind, and they don't necessarily like that all the time. But, there's plenty of achievements on, the banking side, leading deals for the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois, but also the state of California and, city of Dallas as well. So, and those are $600 million deals and $400 million deals. So those are great achievements, but it's just the start. And, there's so much more for us to do.
Martin, thank you so much for your time. I know how much your time is worth, so I appreciate you spending time with us. I appreciate you sharing insights about your life. Thank you. I cannot wait to see how much of a difference you're going to make in our community and how many more achievements you have ahead of you. Thank you. I'm rooting for you. Iscali is rooting for you. And thank you for being a role model for young people.
Yeah, Vicente, hey, thank you for all that you're doing with Iscali and just throughout the whole community. And your prayers always help. So we thank you for that. And I love being here and love supporting the organization.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No olviden seguirnos en Instagram y en Facebook en Iscali Podcast.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Iscali Podcast.
Listen with us and experience the joy of the gospel.
Escúchanos y experimenta la alegría del Evangelio. Te esperamos.
Dare to dream.
Atrévete a soñar.